The veterinarian looked up from the injured dog and shook his head. No. Brigitte Bardot blinked, certain she'd misheard. I'm sorry. What? No. I'm not doing what you're asking. It was September 1976. Brigitte had brought in a severely injured stray dog she'd found on the roadside outside Saint-Tropez. The dog needed surgery, expensive surgery, that the local shelter couldn't afford. I'll pay for everything, Brigitte said, pulling out her checkbook. Whatever it costs, just save him. Dr. Elaine Bougrain-Duberg didn't even glance at the checkbook. That's not the issue. Then what is? The issue is that you're trying to buy your way out of a deeper problem, and I won't be part of that anymore. Brigitte Bardot, the woman who could have anything she wanted, whose name opened every door, whose money solved every problem, had just been told no. For the first time in her adult life, money and fame weren't enough, and that single word would change everything. Dr. Bougrain-Duberg was 43 years old, a veterinarian who ran a small practice in the south of France. He'd treated Brigitte's animals before. She'd brought in strays, rescues, injured wildlife, always with the same approach: arrive, demand immediate service, write a check, leave. He'd accommodated her for years, because she was Brigitte Bardot, because she paid well, because saying no to someone that famous seemed impossible. But something had shifted in him recently, a growing frustration with wealthy people who thought money absolved them of responsibility, who rescued animals for the feeling of being a savior, but never addressed the systemic problems. And Brigitte, he'd decided, was the perfect embodiment of that pattern. I'll save this dog, Dr. Bougrain-Duberg said calmly, but on one condition. Brigitte looked relieved. Anything. Name your price. It's not about price. It's about commitment. If I save this dog, you don't just write a check and leave. You commit. You volunteer at the shelter. You do the actual work. You learn about the scope of the problem, instead of just throwing money at individual cases. Brigitte's face hardened. I don't have time for, then I'm not doing the surgery. You can't just let him die. I'm not letting him die. I'm asking you to care about more than just your own feelings. This dog is one of thousands. Saving him makes you feel good. But if you actually care, you'd work to change the system that creates so many strays in the first place. Brigitte stared at him, fury building. Nobody talked to her like this. Nobody. Do you know who I am? Dr. Bougrain-Duberg smiled sadly. Yes, you're Brigitte Bardot, a very famous woman who's used to getting what she wants. But that doesn't mean you're actually helping. Brigitte walked out. She drove to another veterinarian 30 miles away, paid for the surgery, saved the dog, felt good about herself. But Dr. Bougrain-Duberg's words lingered, burrowed under her skin, kept her awake at night. You're trying to buy your way out of a deeper problem. Saving him makes you feel good. But if you actually care, for 3 days, those words echoed in her head. Because somewhere deep down, she knew he was right. Brigitte had been rescuing animals for years. She'd find strays, pay for their treatment, place them in good homes, write checks to shelters. It made her feel useful, purposeful, like she was doing something meaningful with her wealth and fame. But Dr. Bougrain-Duberg had called her out on something she'd never admitted. She was using animal rescue the same way she'd used everything else in her life, as performance, as image management, as a way to feel good without actually changing anything fundamental. She saved individual animals. But she'd never questioned why so many needed saving, never worked to prevent the problem, never committed to anything beyond the momentary feeling of being a savior. It was charity as therapy, rescue as ego management, helping as performance. And someone had finally told her no, had refused to enable her pattern. On the 4th day, Brigitte drove back to Dr. Bougrain-Duberg's clinic. He was in the middle of examining a cat when she walked in. I'll do it, she said. The volunteering. The work. Whatever you think I should do. Why? The question caught her off guard. Because you were right. I have been using rescue as a way to feel good without actually committing to anything. Dr. Brigitte Bardot set down the cat gently. And you're ready to change that? I don't know, but I'm ready to try. He smiled. Good. Come back tomorrow at 6 a.m. Wear clothes you don't mind ruining. The next morning, Brigitte arrived at the shelter at 6 a.m. She'd worn designer jeans and a silk blouse, the most casual outfit she owned. Dr. Brigitte Bardot took one look and handed her coveralls. Put these on. You'll be cleaning kennels. Cleaning? Did you think volunteering meant posing for photos with puppies? For the next 4 hours, Brigitte cleaned dog kennels, scrubbed floors, hauled bags of waste, washed food bowls, did every unglamorous task the shelter required. Her back ached. Her hands were raw. Her hair smelled like disinfectant. And dog. She'd never been more uncomfortable in her life. And something unexpected happened. She felt more present than she had in years. The work continued. Week after week. Month after month. Brigitte showed up at 6 a.m. every Tuesday and Friday. No photographers, no publicity, no performance. Just work. Real, physical, unglamorous work. She learned to administer medications, to recognize signs of illness, to socialize traumatized animals, to understand the scale of the problem. Thousands of abandoned animals with nowhere to go. And slowly, something inside her shifted. For the first time in her adult life, she was doing something that wasn't about her image, wasn't about maintaining her brand, or managing her legacy, or performing goodness for an audience. She was just helping, anonymously, thanklessly, actually helping. 6 months into her volunteer work, Dr. Brigitte Bardot asked her a question. Why are you still coming? You proved your point months ago. Brigitte thought about it. Because this is the first thing I've done in 20 years that feels real, not performed, not calculated, just real. What's different about it? Nobody here cares that I'm Brigitte Bardot. The dogs don't know, don't care. They just need help, and I can provide it without any expectation of reward or recognition. Dr. Brigitte Bardot nodded. You needed someone to say no to you, to refuse to enable the pattern. Didn't you? Yes. I just didn't know it until you did it. The transformation wasn't immediate. It was gradual, uncomfortable, often painful. Brigitte had to confront how much of her life had been performance, how much had been about managing her image versus actually engaging with the world. The animal work forced her to be present, to show up consistently, to commit to something beyond the momentary dopamine hit of rescuing one animal. It taught her the difference between charity and commitment, between helping for yourself and helping for the sake of helping. A diary entry from March 1977. Dr. B said no to me, and it was the most loving thing anyone's done for me in decades. Everyone else says yes, enables my patterns, lets me stay shallow. He refused. He demanded more, and I'm grateful. But the deeper transformation was about identity. For years, Brigitte had defined herself through external validation, through being desired, being famous, being Brigitte Bardot. When that stopped being fulfilling, she'd tried to redefine herself through rescue, being the savior, the benefactor, the wealthy celebrity who saved animals. Still external, still performance, still about image. Dr. Brigitte Bardot's no forced her to find a different foundation for identity. Not Brigitte Bardot the actress, not Brigitte Bardot the sex symbol, not even Brigitte Bardot the animal rescuer. Just someone who helped, consistently, unglamorously, without recognition. Someone whose value wasn't determined by what others thought, but by what she actually contributed. The relationship between Brigitte and Dr. Bougrain-Dubourg evolved into deep friendship. He became one of the few people in her life who treated her like a normal person, who called her out when she slipped into old patterns, who expected actual commitment instead of gestures. He's the only person who's ever demanded better from me without wanting something in return, Brigitte told a friend in 1978. Everyone else either worships me or uses me. He just expects me to be a decent human being. It's incredibly freeing. The friendship was built on honesty, on boundaries, on the willingness to say no when no was needed. In 1986, Brigitte founded the Brigitte Bardot Foundation for the Welfare and Protection of Animals. But it wasn't the vanity project it could have been. Dr. Bougrain-Dubourg served on the board, ensuring the foundation actually did systemic work, lobbying for animal protection laws, funding shelters, educating the public. Not just rescue, actual change. If I'd founded this organization 10 years earlier, before Dr. B said no to me, it would have been a disaster, Brigitte admitted in a 1990 interview. It would have been about my ego, my image, my need to be seen as a savior. He taught me that real work is unglamorous, that real commitment means showing up consistently, not just writing checks, that helping requires humility, not celebrity. The foundation became her life's work, but it was built on the foundation of that single no. In 2003, a journalist asked Dr. Bougrain-Dubourg about that first encounter with Brigitte. Why did you say no? Wasn't it risky refusing Brigitte Bardot? He smiled. I said no, because she needed to hear it. She'd spent her entire life surrounded by yes, yes to every request, yes to every demand, yes, 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 until the word became meaningless. Nobody had ever loved her enough to say no, to demand that she be better, to refuse to enable her patterns. I said no because I respected her too much to keep participating in her self-deception. Did you know it would change her life? No. I just knew that saying yes wouldn't help. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to give someone what they think they want. Brigitte herself reflected on that moment many times over the years. In a 2008 interview, Dr. B, saying no to me was the beginning of my real life. Everything before that was performance, reaction, survival. But I'd never actually chosen who I wanted to be. His refusal forced me to choose, to commit, to become someone beyond the image. Everyone else in my life, lovers, friends, colleagues, they all said yes. They enabled me. They let me stay shallow. They accepted the performance, because the performance was what they wanted. Dr. B wanted the person underneath, and he refused to settle for less. The impact rippled outward in unexpected ways. Brigitte started saying no to things, setting boundaries, refusing to perform when she didn't want to, demanding authenticity from the people in her life. I learned it from him, she said. The power of no, how it can be an act of love, how boundaries create space for real connection. Friends noticed the change. She became less accommodating, but more genuine, one recalled. She'd say no to things she didn't want to do. And when she said yes, you knew it was real. The woman who'd been told no learned to say it herself, and it transformed her relationships. Dr. Bougrain-Dubourg and Brigitte remained close until his death in 2013. At his funeral, Brigitte gave a brief eulogy. Alain said no to me when everyone else said yes. He refused to enable me when it would have been easier to indulge me. He demanded that I be better when everyone else was content with me being famous. That no changed my life. It forced me to grow up, to commit, to become someone beyond the performance. Everyone talks about the people who believed in them, supported them, said yes. I'm grateful for the one person who loved me enough to say no. In her final years, Brigitte would tell young activists, find someone who will tell you no, who will refuse to enable your patterns, who will demand better from you. Everyone else will tell you what you want to hear. They'll say yes because it's easier, because they want something from you, because they don't care enough to push back. But the people who say no, the ones who love you enough to set boundaries, those are the ones who actually change you. What if nobody says no? Then you have to learn to say it to yourself. You have to be the person who demands better, who refuses to settle, who commits to growth instead of comfort. The one person who said no to Brigitte Bardot changed her life forever. Not because the word was harsh, but because it was honest. Dr. Alain Bougrain-Dubourg looked at the most famous woman in France and refused to let her buy her way out of actual commitment. He saw past the performance to the person underneath, and he demanded that person show up. That single no, spoken firmly but lovingly, shattered the pattern Brigitte had been trapped in for decades. The pattern of using money instead of presence, performance instead of commitment, image instead of substance. Everyone had said yes. Yes to her fame, yes to her fame, yes to her money, yes to the performance. Only one person loved her enough to say no, and that made all the difference. 40 years after that first encounter, Brigitte sat in her foundation office, surrounded by photos of rescued animals and legislative victories. A journalist asked, "What's your greatest achievement?" She didn't hesitate, learning to tell the difference between people who say yes because they want something from me, and people who say no because they want something for me. Dr. B taught me that, with one word, one refusal. And that word, that beautiful, necessary, transformative no saved my life. Because sometimes the most loving thing someone can say isn't, "Yes, I'll give you what you want." It's no, you deserve better than that. And if you're lucky enough to hear it from someone who actually means it, you listen, you grow, you transform. Brigitte did. And the world, especially the animals she devoted her life to protecting, is better because one person had the courage to tell her no.